March 4th, even though all the dates were erased earlier by Taylor Hardesty, and a lot of things were wiped through, we're going to factor by grouping section 7.2, okay? So this is kind of a step beyond what we did in factoring out the GCF, what we did for today, okay, the last two classes. So if we see a problem like this in number 1, what we're going to say here is this first part here, this 3a and the x plus 5, what is 3a and x plus 5? What are those doing? Multiplying. Okay. Now, before, when we were factoring things out, we factored out things that would multiply up to that number, right? So like in the homework, when we had like a 12 and a 9, we said, hey, 3 multiplies to both those numbers. Okay? So we said like, oh, 3 is a factor. Here, we have 3a and x plus 5. So we could say that, don't underline these parts, but we could say 3a is a factor, and we could also say x plus 5 is a factor, because these are two things that are multiplying. Does that make sense? So x is not a factor, 5 is not a factor, but x plus 5 is. Because it's that the whole thing, in parentheses, is multiplying with the 3a, and the 3a is a factor as well. Now, check back in. Okay, what would that tell us on this part, the 2 and the x plus 5? What would be a factor over here? X plus 5 is a factor, and what else is a factor? The 2 is a factor as well. It's because those two things are multiplying together. That's the definition of factors, okay? They're multiplying together. Now, if this first part, the factors are 3a and x plus 5, the second part, the factors are 2 and x plus 5. Do they have that second factor, the x plus 5, in common? The first part and the second part, do they both have x plus 5? Yeah, so we're going to do the same thing we just did, where they both things had a 3, or both things had an x squared, and we pull it out into the front. Well, now we're going to do that with x plus 5, and we're going to pull that out to the front. And we're going to put parentheses after to say, hey, what's going to come after that? Go write this part down now. Write down what I have here, the x plus 5 in that second parenthesis. Okay, so just like before, what I remember us drawing that division off to the side of what we would do. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to take this entire first term, 3a times x plus 5, and we're going to divide it by what our GCF was. In this case, x plus 5. Now, just like before, when we could reduce things, like when we had like a's on top and a's on bottom, we could reduce them, right? Same thing. We have an x plus 5 multiplying with 3a, and we have an x plus 5 here. So we can reduce those. And what are we left with if we reduce those? 3a. Just 3a. Minus. And then we do the same thing in the second whole entire thing. 2 times x plus 5, and we're again going to divide by this x plus 5 that's out in front of the whole thing. And now again, if we take that away, we still have that 2 over there multiplying with it. And now we have this in our second parenthesis as a minus 2. And we're now going to say, this is our answer. We created multiplication. Because now this first parenthesis and the second parenthesis are now multiplying together. Yes, Tucker?
So your GCF would be what's inside the parentheses?
In this case, yeah, because they both have x plus 5 in common. Okay. And that's the greatest thing they have in common. Yeah, exactly right. Lainey. I'm sorry about that. Let's try and pick our head up the best we can, though, okay? Let's look at number 2. What are we thinking might be a GCF here? Yeah, the a minus b, they both have that in common. That first part and the second part both have that as a common factor. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to pull that out in front. Now, what's going to be in my second parentheses? Does anyone have an idea? 2x plus y. Yeah, what's going to be left over? So this first part, if we take away the a minus 3, we're left with 2x. The second part, we take away the a minus 3, we're left with y. And so that's going to be left over.
That one was actually really good.
That was really easy.
Thank you. Okay. Okay. I like it when you're wearing like a dress, you know. Yeah. Anyway. So this is going to lead us into, this is kind of the first step, okay, in the next thing we're going to be doing. So I figured this would be a good connection to what we're about to do. When there are 4 terms, we put them in groups of 2. So we group things in math by using parentheses. We group these together. And then we look for a GCF. Then we look for another GCF of those. So here, if we had this example right here, everyone look at the board, please. 4ab plus 3a plus 8b plus 6. We put them in parentheses. So we put the first 2 in a parenthesis. We put the last 2 in a parenthesis. See how that's the only change from the first step to the next step? Just put parentheses around those first 2 and the last 2. Then 4ab and 3a. If we just look at this individually, what do those have in common? A. So we pull an a out, and we're left with 4b plus 3. Does that make sense? That'd be like a problem we just had for today, wouldn't it? And then we basically have another problem right over here. 8b plus 6. What do those have in common? Even bigger, though. Or some of you know they're not even bigger. I lied. 2. And then we get 4b plus 3. My bad, Tucker. Yeah, you're acting me like, what is bigger than 2 that goes into this? Nothing, because I was wrong. Now, do we notice this 4b plus 3 and this 4b plus 3 are the same thing here and here? Does this step right here look familiar to anything like these two? Yeah, it's the same exact step. And so we do the same thing. We take this 4b plus 3, put that out on the front, and take the a plus 2 that's left over and put it in that parenthesis that follows. And that's our answer. Now, if you were to go back through and FOIL this, you guys remember FOIL, or like the 1 3 1 4 2 3 2 4 thing? If we go back and FOIL it, you want to bet what we get? This exact same thing when we started. Let me show you how that works. So if I were to FOIL 4b plus 3 and a plus 2, 4b times a would be 4ab. We put them alphabetical. 4b times 2 would be 8b. 3 times a would be 3a. And 3 times 2 would be 6. Now, are these the same terms, just in a different order? Yeah, so we could reorder it and have the same thing, right? So are we still able to check our work if we want? Totally okay. And we still create this multiplication, which is actually going to be really handy later that we'll see, okay? Questions on this before we move on to a couple practice problems. Okay? So let's look at example 1 here. 15a minus 3ab minus 4b plus 20. Now, not all 4 of these don't have anything in common. They don't have any numbers in common. They don't all have a variable in common, do they? If we look between 15, 3, 4, and 20, do all 4 of those have a number in common? No. Do they all have an A?
Yes. Not all.
No. Do they all have a B? No, so they don't have anything in common. So we can't pull anything out of the whole thing. So what we do with 4 terms is we're going to group those first 2. And we're going to group those last 2. Now, I'm going to take that sign with the third thing. So that minus sign, I'm going to take it with the third thing, okay? So I want us to practice that. It's going to help us out here. Now, we look for a GCF in these first 2. So between 15 and 3, what's our GCF here? 3. And then we have an A as well, right? So it's going to be a 3A. And what's left over in that parenthesis then? Not 15. 5. Very good, Lainey. Minus B. Very good. Now that second parenthesis. Negative 4B and a 20. What's our GCF? 4. But now we said, do we want the first term in the parenthesis to be negative or positive? Positive. So what do we have to take out? What kind of 4? Negative 4, okay? So I'm going to take out a negative 4. And then what's going to be left in the parentheses?
B.
B.
Plus 20.
Not plus 20.
Minus 20. Or plus minus 5.
Minus 5. Because what happened in the second parenthesis was we took negative 4b divided by negative 4. It became a positive b. Positive 20 divided by a negative 4 became a negative 5. Does that make more sense, Hannah? Thank you for telling me you're confused. Maddie, can you write this down? Okay. You're in the weirdest position. All right. So now, does this step look familiar again? I really hope it does, okay? Because this 5 minus b and wait, b minus 5, are those the same thing?
Yeah.
Well, no, because they're different sides, but technically.
Okay. So they're kind of different, aren't they? Okay. Actually, let me back this up then.
It's a negative b instead of a
Okay.
positive.
So let's rewrite that second one because in order for this to work, they have to be the same, don't they? Okay. So let me rewrite that. So instead of, I'm going to leave the first one the same. That's fine. The second one, if I do a negative 5 plus b, is that still the same thing though? Are the parentheses the exact same? No, the signs are switched. Okay. Well, actually, maybe we want to unswitch these signs then. I know we took that negative out, but maybe we actually want to unswitch these signs because we need it to match up. So how can we unswitch the signs?
So take it out.
Can we put the negative back in? 'Cause by making this a positive and this one a positive and the next one a negative. So now are those parentheses the exact same?
Yeah.
Yeah, so what can we do if those parentheses are the 100% exact same? No. Put that in the front as our GCF. And then what do I write afterwards?
3A.
I make parentheses and I put the 3a plus 4, whatever's left. I take whatever's left of each. I take the 3a and I take the plus 4. And I create a multiplication. If I were to FOIL, do you know what I would get? The same thing we started with. As long as we do it correctly.
Can we do one more together before we do it?
Oh, of course. Questions on that one, though? Wait, let's look at number 2. Once again, there's nothing they have in common, all 4 of them. But we can group those first 2 and the last 2. When we ever see 4 terms like this, 1, 2, 3, 4 things, we're going to want to group the first 2 and last 2. It's going to be a habit we get into. And what am I going to do with that negative sign?
Keep it in the third second.
Very good. Put that in the second parentheses, right? Now, that first parenthesis, C minus 2CD. What goes into both those? What's the greatest common factor of those? C. So what are you going to be left with in the parentheses if we take that C out? 1 minus 2D? Because what's C divided by C?
Oh.
C divided by C is 1. If we take the C out of a C, you just have a 1 left. There's still something there. And then we take negative 2CD divided by C, and we have a C.
So when we're doing this, we take, or you ask us what's in the parentheses, that's good. We take C divided by C.
Yeah. Yep, that was, we did it before where the division was off to the side. But we're gonna I'm gonna try seeing if we can do it without writing the division on the side. But if we want to still, you can definitely still do that. There's nothing wrong with it. Okay. Now the second parenthesis, negative 8D plus 4. You know what? I'm sorry, guys. I'm gonna rewrite the order for those. Okay. I'm gonna tell us that the order for these last 2 should actually instead be 4 minus 8D. Okay. I'm gonna change that for us. Okay. So go ahead and make that adjustment real quick. I'm changing the order for those last 2. Olivia, can you put that phone away, please? Let's make the adjustment for the second parenthesis, guys, to change that. Can you guys do that real quick in the original problem? Okay. So now, what's going to be the greatest common factor between 4 and an 8D? 4. And it's going to be a positive 4. So I'm going to put out that plus sign with it. Now, what's going to be left after I take out a 4 from 4? 1. And then negative 8D becomes a negative 2D. Now, what do we notice about our parentheses here? They're the same, aren't they? So, just like before, when the parentheses are the same, what does that mean we can do?
It's our G10.
It's our GCF, right? This is our greatest common factor. So we can take that and put it out in front, the 1 minus 2D. And what do I put in the second set of parentheses? Because every time we take our greatest common factor out, we put something on a second parenthesis, and it's going to be the C what?
G plus 4.
Plus 4. Very good. Whatever's left outside those parentheses. And if we FOIL, we get what we started with.
I'm just a little confused. Where we get this? Just kidding, just kidding.
Does it make more sense now?
Yeah. So we just take the outsides. Like, okay, so in the parentheses, the one on the outside, put them together?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Lainey, what are you confused about?
It's just dumb, and I'm dumb.
You're not dumb. You're Lainey. Okay. Okay, well, if we need more help later, let me know, okay? I'm sorry about your headache. On number 3, 4 things. So what are we going to do when we have 4 different things?
Parentheses. Wait, no. Yeah,
Yep, put parentheses around them. Very good. So we're going to group those first 2 and the last 2. And I'm always going to take that sign with the third one. What do you say?
I just said first row is the same, but not the exponents.
Yeah, but not the same. Yeah. That's true. All right. 5n to the third plus 20n squared. What's our GCF here in that first parenthesis? Just like we did yesterday. 5 what?
And to first. Or not the second.
To the second, because they both have at least a 2. This one has a 3, this one has a 2. They both have at least a 2. Now, if we take 5n to the third and we take away 5n squared, what are we going to be left with? Just a 1n. So we're an n. Now, once again, if we're more comfortable writing it off to the side, please do that, okay? Now it's going to be a plus sign. What is 20n squared divided by 5n squared?
4.
Just 4. And then you took out all the n's, so you don't have any. Now, what are we hoping our second parenthesis we're going to make here in a moment is going to have inside of it? We're going to hope it's going to have an n plus 4. We want it to be the exact same for this to work. Because if it's not the same, this doesn't work. So what's our GCF, though, you said, Maddie, for the second one?
It's going to be 4.
It's going to be 4. And then now, if we take a 4 out, what are we left with?
Or
N plus 4. So are parentheses the exact same again?
Yes.
Good. What can we do when they're the exact same? Make it our GCF. Put it out in front, and then make another set of parentheses. So I have to say, okay, well, what's left if we take that out of each?
5n to the second plus 4.
Very good. And now we created a multiplication. So see how we undid the FOIL? And FOIL is just really distributing, kind of like on steroids. Okay? Did you ever think you'd hear your math teacher say something was on steroids?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, I'm not convinced. 2 and 7 don't have a common factor, do they? Okay, but there are 4 terms here, so what are we going to do on the fourth one? You can group them again. So we're going to group the first 2 and the last 2, taking that sign with the third thing again. Now, the first 2, 2xy and 7x, they don't have any numbers in common, but what do they have in common? An x. So we can take out an x. And what's left inside the parentheses if we take an x out? 2y plus not 7x, but just plus 7, because we took the x away. Now, negative 2y minus 7, we said we don't want it to be negative, so we're going to take out. So do the 2 and the 7 have anything in common? Okay. Do the 2 and the 7 have anything in common? No. Do they both have a y? No. So do we see any common factor? No. So we're just going to make it a negative 1. Now, why did I make it a negative?
Because it is a negative.
Because it starts with a negative. And do we want it to start with a negative? No. And so the only thing they have in common is 1, because is 1 a factor of 2 and 7? Well, sure, 1's a factor of literally everything. So we can always put a 1 there. And so what's left inside the parenthesis if we just take out a negative 1? 2y plus 7. Very good. Now, inside the parentheses, these 2 of them, do we have the same exact thing?
Yes.
Gucci. So what can we do with that? Make it our GCF. And what does that mean if we make it our GCF? What are we going to do?
2 plus 7.
Okay, 2y plus 7 is going to go first. And then do I make another set of parentheses here?
Yeah.
Okay. That's going to be x minus 1. And that's it. Okay, so as we go through the homework here in a second, that's the section, that's literally it. I want us to keep these notes out so that way you can compare them side by side, okay? And I think really seeing this pattern and then going through some on your own and continuing to see the pattern is going to help you, because did we go through the same exact steps every time? Yeah. Group 2, group the first 2, group the last 2. First GCF, second GCF. Oh, parentheses are the same. Pull that out and whatever's left. Number 1 on the homework should be, instead of x to the third minus x squared plus 3x plus 3, it should be x to the third plus x squared. So everyone make that a change on number 1. It should be 3 plus signs, not a minus plus plus, okay? Everyone have that change?
Yeah.
All right.
What's the difference if it's
If it's minus, this problem doesn't work. Good question.
Well, I might be doing it wrong.
Yeah, you weren't.
Here you go.
Yes.